Thanks for joining us, everyone, for this week's instalment of the ABMC Research Mini-Review webinars. Firstly, I'd just like to start with an acknowledgement of country, that we acknowledge that the traditional custodians of the land in which most of us work and live, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. It gives me great pleasure today to welcome Diane Dixon, who's the State Project Lead for LotFourteen, an initiative of the Department of Premier and Cabinet. Di comes to sort of LotFourteen with a wealth of knowledge in all aspects of project management, including but not limited to infrastructure, stakeholder engagement, strategy, innovation, and investment and trade. Di previously led actually the planning and delivery of the Gold Coast Health and Knowledge Precinct. And in her current role as lead for LotFourteen, it also encompasses delivery of key pieces of infrastructure as part of the Adelaide City Plan deal, which includes many things that I'm sure you've heard of: the Entrepreneur and Innovation Centre, Innovation Hub, and the Takari, which comprises of the Centre for First Nations of Cultures, First Nations Entrepreneur Hub, and the Digital Technologies Academy. So as you can tell, LotFourteen is in very capable hands, and look forward to your presentation, Di.
Thanks very much, Tamara, and thanks everyone for the opportunity to give you a bit of an update and overview of where the LotFourteen Innovation District currently is at. And as you can see on your screens now, our vision is very much about collaboration, not just within the district, but across all of the other innovation areas within the state, and then working with our partners nationally and globally. Next. So in terms of our strategic direction, sorry, Tamara, if you can.
There you go.
Yeah. In terms of our strategic direction, we're very much focused around that delivery of collaboration through really driving statewide economic impact in the sectors that we're very focused on at LotFourteen, being space, defence, cyber, high tech, and a layer of creative as well, and really driving that training and education and skills-based pipeline, as well as the creation of employment opportunities, both within the district, but those associated supporting skills that are required as well for a really vibrant statewide approach to these sort of innovation districts and creating that broader ecosystem. And for us, as with Biomed City, we're very fortunate to be part of the CBD and part of the activities and programs that are occurring within the business area. And for us, it's about creating a really attractive and engaging place for not only the occupants of LotFourteen, but also the visitors that we currently attract and hope to attract a lot more into the future. Next slide. And so in terms of the types of activities we're doing, that's obviously all focused around how we elevate the state, South Australia, on the global stage, and really look at driving outcomes from the investment. So very fortunate at LotFourteen with a significant amount of government investment, which has enabled us to really establish a strong innovation district with that over 750 million into the infrastructure and programs that we're currently undertaking, which I'll touch on in more detail. And longer term, in terms of what that will deliver to the state once the infrastructure is fully completed and the programming and curation is a lot more established, and that drives the opportunity for uplift in economic activity for the state. And that's currently indicated around the 3.5 billion mark. And also that infrastructure and activity will drive a highly skilled workforce that not only elevates productivity for the precinct and the state, but for the surrounds in terms of the multiplier effect around the generation of supporting skills and employment for that workforce that are based within the district itself. Next slide, thanks. So where are we today? Most of you, but maybe not all of you, are aware of the precinct, a 7-hectare site that has some layers of growth now occurring. We've established ourselves with the conversion of the old Adelaide Hospital site, which was fully functioning in this area just just over 4 years ago. So the momentum, I can't stress enough, and the progress that has occurred over a short span of time, really over the last 3.5, 4 years, has really just been outstanding. And for me, having other experiences in such innovation districts, it's certainly something I haven't experienced in the past. But having those heritage buildings that you can see along the front of North Terrace there, those 6 buildings now fully refurbished, really presents a really attractive juxtaposition around the attraction of those high-tech sectors that we're focused on. All of those buildings are now fully occupied, and we're now looking at some of the additional refurbishment of non-heritage buildings to cater for some of that demand. And I should stress that the demand is really focused on those sectors I've mentioned, and that's where it's really important to be protective of the entire state's innovation ecosystem and be clear on what sectors we're trying to attract and how we support others. And I'll touch on some examples with Biomed City, but also for our partners at Tonsley in particular, and how we work across those. So some tenants that may come to us wanting occupancy at LotFourteen may be far better suited to be elsewhere in other innovation districts or within other areas of the state. So that's a journey we try and engage on through the LotFourteen delivery team. So the next stage will be around the delivery of the Adelaide City deal components, which are the new wave of infrastructure delivery, which I'll touch on in more detail. But on this plan, you can see those indicated with the Takari, the home of First Nations cultures, to the right of that slide image, and then our dominant sort of flagship building in the centre there, which is currently named the Entrepreneur and Innovation Centre as its working title. And then we have several other development sites that I'll touch on, and one of those will be home to the working title of Digital Technologies Academy, to really help addressing that skills-based requirements. Next slide, Tamara. Thank you. And this really just outlines the vast and highly appreciated level of government investment into the precinct, both in those stages that are already fully operational. So we have the Australian Space Agency national headquarters at LotFourteen, and in addition to that, within the same building, the Australian Space Discovery Centre and a Mission Control Centre, which have been really high attractors and catalysts to the growth and the attraction subsequently of other industry and startups in that space, for want of a better word, and also the establishment of our First Nations Entrepreneur Hub, the Circle, which currently houses over 130 of our SA Aboriginal businesses, and they're highly supported then through that collaborative space that we have located at LotFourteen. As part of the city deal component, there was also the contribution, which is a significant piece in terms of the conversion of the site from a fully functioning hospital into an innovation district. And that's the work that Renewal SA are undertaking as part of the LotFourteen delivery team around the refurbishment of those heritage buildings and the demolition of components so that we have those future development sites. And because of that demand I mentioned, we were actually successful in securing an additional 20 million last year to refurbish a couple of buildings that we have that will be that could be fully utilised with the tenancy interest that we currently have, to try and maintain that momentum. We're also, because of the level of tenancy interest we have, working with the City of Adelaide and using this as a mechanism to maintain momentum and ensure that we are able to accommodate the interest and secure them to Adelaide as a whole and to the state, while other buildings and other innovation districts become and grow and become more established in their own right as well. And then when we talk about the next phase of growth for LotFourteen, it's very much around the three at the bottom of that table, which are part of the Adelaide City deal. So have that funding from state and federal levels of government. But this table also enables us to have that third column around private investment, and that's where we see the future developments then coming. So government has been the catalyst to the establishment of the district, but now we see the level of private investment, particularly around the Entrepreneur and Innovation Centre, as you see there, with 400 million now committed from a private owner and operator, with the catalyst of the 24 million from the other levels of government, which I'll go into a bit more detail on. Thanks, Tamara. So the next 6 years looking forward is really about the delivery of those 3 key infrastructure delivery projects, but projects that are really going to take the bar to the next level in terms of what we're able to curate amongst the collaboration within the precinct, but also provide the facilities that ensure that this is an innovation district that can evolve and change over time, which is really critical. The built infrastructure is just the enabler. It's really how we curate and attract the right activities that are going to give us that balance. So when I'm quite often asked when will LotFourteen be complete, I like to stress that in terms of infrastructure delivery, that we are aiming for 2028, but innovation districts are never complete. They will evolve over time. We don't know the technologies, the industries, or the work that we'll be trying to accommodate in the future. So it's just really important to create the right ecosystem and the spaces and the programming and the roles of the partners in research, private academia and public agencies are all part of that journey. Thanks, Tamara. So where are we today? So this is our snapshot. We create these measurables on a monthly basis to really help us understand how the precinct's evolving. Obviously, with that lag of new infrastructure coming online over the next 2 years, some of these figures will stay static now for a while, but this is where we hope to look at areas on the peripheral of LotFourteen to help keep momentum going as well. So across those 6 refurbished heritage buildings, we now have just under 1,400 people working and researching in those facilities. They are all at 100% capacity. We do have, as you can see there, 5% capacity. That's literally the non-heritage buildings I've mentioned, which we already have tenants identified for those when that work's complete at the end of this calendar year. We have I think now over 160 businesses on site, very focused, as you can see on the pie chart, around those predominant sectors that we have our focus targeting on, being the defence space and high-tech areas, with a particular emphasis there on high-tech. But that will be interesting over time to see how that evolves and changes as we get more dedicated facilities coming in. And as I mentioned, we also have that First Nations focus for the Innovation District, and that's really been supported through our First Nations Entrepreneur Hub, The Circle, which not only is supporting Aboriginal businesses across the state, but the hub at LotFourteen is really enabling us to really have raise the bar and the aspirations about Aboriginal involvement in not only the construction work that's happening at LotFourteen and then subsequently across the state, but also how we can help them come together, build their critical mass and capabilities for them being able to tender collectively for work going forward. So that's something we're actually looking at a real expansion across the entire district. And of course, we can't undervalue the economic impact of the construction work that's occurring at this stage of the project. So we've averaged between 100 and I think 300 or 400 a day, currently sitting around the 300 mark, but that will significantly increase with those new builds coming online, and that's likely to go up to around the 600 construction contractors on site on a daily basis. So in terms of the current ecosystem and how we're really trying to balance out how collaboration comes together, and I think COVID really showed us at LotFourteen that people do want to be physically located together. They do want to have those spaces, which is something we encourage very much, just around our tenants coming in, have access to a range of public spaces, meeting rooms, shared facilities to really help that, that organic collaboration to occur, and the crossing over of disciplines, which quite often can get restricted even in innovation districts when they become tech park approach. So the percentage breakdown at the moment, not surprisingly, as we have a lot of SMEs and scale up companies, around the 41%. And then that ranges then in terms of the mixture of government organisations at 11%, but also global and national companies and corporations at 13% mark. And then that layer of research, which is obviously the critical driver in terms of niche expertise and the ability to really link into industry directly, which is currently sitting at the 22% mark. So something that we're really interested in monitoring as we go along, to then look and see how that mix has an impact on the collaboration and the outcomes and outputs of LotFourteen. Thanks. So a key catalyst to the success, I would say, to date of LotFourteen has really been that early establishment of some strategic partners and having their location at LotFourteen. And so in particular, as I've mentioned, having the national headquarters for the Australian Space Agency, for the National SmartSat CRC facility, elements like that have really enabled the rest of the country and the world to note that Adelaide has become home to those national headquarters. And just going forward, that both of those agencies are growing their presence at LotFourteen. But we also have significant catalyst foundational partners with the University of Adelaide's Australian Institute for Machine Learning, and the crossover that's had through a range of industry sectors, and of interest maybe to some of the audience today in that health sector space as well, and the use of a lot of their applications across medical machine learning, health analytics, etc. And also the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre has really enabled us to grow our presence nationally, in particular around cybersecurity and the training within that, with the cyber range that's located at LotFourteen. But we're also seeing a lot of excitement and interest internationally, and with the recent inclusion of MITRE from the US, with their first presence in Australia being located now within the Cyber Collaboration Centre at LotFourteen, and Stone & Short running the startup facility within one of the buildings, and just the evidence over the last 3 years of their activities and support, now of over 200 members and over 60 startup companies, with $90 million being raised in venture capital funding since their activities at LotFourteen began. Thanks, Tamara. And the layer also, and attracting the global names that you see here, the likes of Microsoft, Amazon and Google, and that presence is a really strong indicator of the interest in the types of startup activity and entrepreneur activity that's occurring at LotFourteen, and their interest of actually being part of that and being able to collaborate in that entrepreneur space, but also offer the support to those startup and scale up companies for how they can work together going forward. And I'll touch on, I think, the next slide, some of those partnerships that we're seeing evidence of at the moment because of that co-location. So opportunities like Personify Care, which is one of our startup companies, which is working in the streamlining of digital patient records and looking at the clinical and administrative needs. But then they're actually able to partner with Chamonix and Amazon within LotFourteen to look at ways that that can be accelerated through the existing hospital systems, through the Personified Connect app. So that's one that's health related. And in the space sector with Canini, which is the state government funded satellite, which is being actually constructed and built at LotFourteen by Innovore Technologies. In one of our facilities within the site, but they're partnering across with Myriota as an Internet of Things company for what that data that's collected by the satellite will be used for, and then the applications being supported through the SmartSat CRC in particular. So these are examples of how our partners are coming together from that startup through to the larger global companies. Thanks, Tamara. And so just to give a bit of a snapshot just on the three next wave of pieces of LotFourteen for people's awareness. So as I mentioned, Quintessential Equity will own and operate this facility and fund its construction, which is about a $400 million investment. And that was catalysed by the $20 million that was identified to create an innovation hub. So at the moment we have about 20,000 square metres of tenancy area. This building will have over 40,000, so doubling what we currently have, which shows the impact a building of this type will have. Again, focusing on not becoming a competitor to other precincts or the central business district. And this building is very much been designed fit for purpose for defence, high security requirements in those upper levels, and there'll be about 15 stories. But if we can move to the next slide, the 20 million that was identified for the Innovation Hub has enabled government to take a lease over the ground floor levels of this building, so that the ground and first floor will be part of an innovation hub, where we've been working very closely with the 3 state universities and look at how we can value add to their commercialisation activities. So not looking at replicating it, and very much trying to create a space. It's a challenge for LotFourteen with the sectors around collaboration spaces, but also providing the provision for that high-tech, secure office location for the activities that just demand that requirement. So really looking at how we have these areas where industry can have representation from each of the universities, other innovation districts, and have this ability to look at solutions, problem solving, and industry-led commercial outcomes that add value to what's already occurring within the state. So that's about a 2,500 square metre commitment by the government for the next 10 years of operation. The building will be hopefully complete by 2025, but we're hoping to actually activate this innovation hub component within current facilities towards the end of this year. So this will become a real building of critical mass and offering, particularly in the sectors that we're focused on. Thanks, Tamara. And the Digital Technologies Academy, again, a working title, but through the sort of industries and businesses we're attracting to LotFourteen and other areas across the state, everyone would be aware there's a global demand for these digital skills. So this was something that we identified of how we could play a part in that and really create a facility that looks at the pathways, that isn't trying to, again, replicate what's already working across our other education and training organisations. So we've worked very extensively through a series of stakeholder engagement at workshops to really look at how do we address industry needs and have the agility and flexibility to meet those demands on a very short time scale, while also creating the pathways and pipelines to the offerings that we already have as a state. And this is something that a lot of the cybersecurity in particular companies have been interested in, and our way that we can link into their demands. And the 60 million that has been committed jointly through state and Commonwealth government can have value add with those industry sectors and partners that may very well likely want to be part of the same facility, and expansion of the activities we're already seeing with the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre at LotFourteen. So we're currently just going through the establishment phase of the business and operating case for that facility, and hope it as well for construction to start towards the end of next year for that, for completion in 2025. Thanks, Tamara. And the really interesting component of LotFourteen, not something you would traditionally imagine within an innovation district, is Tukari, home of First Nations cultures. And this has been a significant journey over the last 3 years. This is obviously a key component of the Adelaide City deal, with 200 million committed to its capital delivery, so the construction of the project. And this is really based around to celebrate and utilise the extensive collections that are held by the South Australian government in the museum on behalf of Aboriginal communities across the country, and to really enable us to not only celebrate and share those stories, but do it in a really culturally sensitive way, but in one that aligns to an engaged and immersive experience. So LotFourteen tenants already and others across the state are already playing a part in how we're actually going to do that immersive, technology-driven experience. So this isn't about a static museum experience. This is very much about an immersive journey through a facility that utilises the knowledge and the artefacts that we hold here in the state, but being led through an Aboriginal reference group that has helped us up to this point in time. Early works are underway on the site through an Aboriginal company, so that's wonderful. But we hope for main construction works to start early next year, with an opening in 25-26. And then what happens next, or what happens in parallel to meet the demand? So this is obviously something we're now very much focused on, with those 3 city deal projects starting to get momentum on their delivery. How do we then start looking at the other development sites we have? And that's where the curation and the role of the delivery team is really focused on partnering to look at what those next phase activities are to support the sectors that we're focusing on. And that will obviously, as you can see, significantly drive the tenancy available areas and the areas that we have going forward. So there are the 2 yellow sites, there are ones that are currently available for development, so they will happen quite quickly, hopefully after those, particularly the Entrepreneur and Innovation Centre and Digital Technologies Academy have occurred. But then we also have the future demolition of non-heritage buildings across the site, Lot A, and also the 2 in red there that you see, being the current buildings that are fully occupied, but will be part of a future demolition programme coming towards the end of the infrastructure delivery part of LotFourteen. Thanks. And we're also very conscious of how we make this a very engaging space, and that's probably also the element that Takari has provided for us, in that originally the site was parklands. 50% of the site will be returned to parklands, opened landscaped areas. 70% of the site will be publicly accessible. So we're very focused on creating a really engaging space, not for just for the visitation that we expect to obviously increase. We have significant interest obviously already coming through the Australian Space Discovery Centre, but once Takari opens, we're anticipating visitation of around 700,000 a year. So this will be a really interesting piece in terms of working very closely with Botanic Gardens in terms of that integration, and to create somewhere where companies are interested to come and work and research, because it's a really attractive place for the people that they want to not only attract to the state, but also to be able to retain here. So a really, I suppose, different part of an innovation district, but something that we're very focused on. Thanks, Tamara. And that links into the focus that we have, obviously, in creating a really vibrant, engaging space. We've already done some partnerships with the likes of Illuminate and other festivals that occur within Adelaide. But how do we grow on that going forward? And the open park area will enable us to look at those events and activities, as well as the open plaza of Takari, which will have an open amphitheatre at the rear of it, and it be fully integrating into the Botanic Gardens. Thanks, Mark. And linking into that, we're very focused on the infrastructure build as well. So looking at how we lead urban redevelopment and create one of the most sustainable districts. And that's really been achieved to date through the Green Building Council of Australia and the allocation of a 6-star Green Star Communities rating under that from an international perspective. And we're also have been awarded as one of the first pre-certified well communities projects in Australia. So really looking at how we can create that engaging space, but also recognising the importance of wellness, health and fitness and social engagement alongside a great place to be engaged to work in and research in as well. Thanks. And this is the final slide before we've got a short DVD just to play. And again, this is something I always like to stress whenever I'm presenting on LotFourteen, that we're just part of a much bigger picture, particularly when we're looking at a global audience and trying to attract interest and investment. And people around the world will look at Australia, then they'll look at the state, and then they will get down to the granular level of where to do that. And that's where it's really important that we work together across our innovation districts. We've established an Innovation Precinct Alliance for that very reason. I'm working also very closely with our industry, innovation and science partners in government, and also the chief scientist. So to really look at how we make sure we're sharing the interest across precincts, but also work together where there's that cross-pollination of ideas and things occurring across our sites. So I might just stop talking there, finish off with our short presentation, and then happy to take any questions if we've time.
Thank you very much, Di. That was excellent. Everybody wants a cool video for their institute or district now. That was very nice. I even recognised a few 40 under 40.
Very good.
So I should have said earlier to the audience, if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A and I can read them out. But I thought I might touch on something myself. You mentioned it quite a few times, a bit of a common theme through the presentation, and actually mentioned it at the end, the Innovation Alliance. Could you speak a bit more to that?
Yeah, sure. So as I say, from my journey to date and experience in other innovation districts, we're only as successful as we all stand together. And I think just through the earlier conversations I had, particularly with Biomed City and Tonsley, was that there were so many things that we could share together and that were kind of starting to happen organically, but how could we really help accelerate that and at least be communicating, have a consistent narrative as a state around the innovation and commercialisation opportunities that we have, but then also look at how we tie things together. And I think a really nice example of that is things like the Institute for Machine Learning, and obviously for Biomed City, a great example is the use of that facility around health and medical analytics, and examples like, I know there's an artificial intelligence model that's been developed at AMIL that's been used to detect hip fractures from x-rays, or our Living Lab component in terms of how we look at data and analyse that to streamline health and medical processes, and companies like Precigen that are located at LotFourteen that are applying their work with Amazon but into the health sector. So for us collectively talking about that, as I said, we're just starting out, as you know, Tamara, in terms of that, but it's about creating a consistent narrative for the states that we're all talking to and really advocating for, and then having these really impressive examples of how things are maybe happening in one precinct, but then being elevated or leveraged by other precincts. And Tonsley is a great example of where we don't need to replicate manufacturing facilities in other innovation districts. Tonsley's there to perform that component, and how do we link the companies into that acknowledgement. So, and it also ties into the Department for Industry, Innovation and Science around their Excite strategy, and also the work of the Chief Scientist around commercialisation and the integration of that, and intermediary programs. So making sure we have that line of sight collectively is really important.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's so important that we, like you said, focus on the whole state sort of wide initiative and activating the whole ecosystem for these multidisciplinary, projects and large scale collaborative work, which is really good. Well, in the interest of time, thank you again very much for, I always love listening to talks on Lot14. It's hard to keep up with the progress there, but it's a great problem to have. So thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Di, again, and we'll see you same time next week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Di.